Nathan.
Well, we're on city water, we pay for it.
What's that? Who? Oh, thank you. All right, good morning. Welcome to the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors meeting for Monday, February, what do we got today? 24th, thank you. 2025, I'm going to call the meeting to order. The first item of business is to approve the agenda. Before we do, I will note there is one correction to the notes where it notes the hiring approved. It is not a corrections officer, it is a food service employee. So just bear that in mind. I would entertain a motion on the agenda.
I'll move to approve as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Okay. Next item of business is discussion and possible action on a request from Mississippi Valley Child Protection Center for permission to place blue pinwheels and signs at the Muscatine Courthouse, County Jail, County Attorney, Community Services Building for April's Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month with Jenna Wagner. Good morning.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
Same request like every year. We just kind of ask. We just place them at a couple of those places. County Attorney's Office is only like a base in their office just because there's no space over there. So, sorry, Jim. So just
Make them
kinda-
wear a hat.
Huh?
One of those propeller hats.
We could. So that just my request is the same as every year, is just placing them in the planters and that.
Wonderful.
Well, you guys always do a great job with that and managing it, and
I don't know,
hopefully
it's always windy, so.
hopefully it's effective, so.
Yeah.
I'll move the approval.
Well, you know, I would take a second for somebody.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Be careful though, we do have a windmill ordinance moratorium in effect, so don't let it get too big.
Yeah, zoning might be after
We keep it small, man. So.
All right. Item number 4, items with Community Services Director Jessica Bopes. Good morning, ma'am. Item A is discussion of possible action to revise fee schedules for General Assistant and Veterans Affairs Services.
So, I think we talked about this a little bit, but we are proposing to raise the annual court fees from $100 to $300. I had sent the board a packet with comparisons of what other places charge. It's well within line of what they're charging. Some places are charging $150 an hour. I've met with all my trust workers. They all think that their clients can afford the $300. If they can't, we would waive those. The fees have not, so the fees used to be dependent on their income, and it was a calculation that someone in the office did. When she retired, that went by the wayside, and everybody has been charged for the last 3 or 4 years $100 a year. But that doesn't even cover like the cost of everything that we do with the court fees. And so at this point, we think $300 would be reasonable for guardianship. And then if we're conservative, $300 as well. If we're both, then it would just be a $300 unless the client has significant assets. The other part of this is we are allowed, so for some of our clients, we are VA fiduciary, and we are allowed to charge 4% of their income, and we are currently not doing that. That's another part of my proposal. I would like to start charging that 4%. It'll be entirely dependent. Again, Eric Sanders from my office said most of the veterans fall somewhere between $175 and $4,000 per month from what they get as a benefit. Clearly, again, if somebody's only getting $175, we probably would waive that. We look at that in every budget that we do. For the trust fees, again, I looked at that. We had not increased those since 2013. So the 2013 was the $40 a month, and we have now gone to the $55, which Social Security allows. So this should stabilize some of the expenses that we have, especially with losing region funding.
Do you have an idea as to how much additional revenue this is projected to generate?
Yes. I had sent it to you. I believe it's
I'm sorry.
somewhere.
Is it-
I sent it to you
For
a couple weeks ago. I think it's around
I
60,000.
don't remember it either, but.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry. It's
I have a
over
short
there.
attention span. I have a short attention span.
I think it's somewhere around 60,000.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay,
And these are, yeah, so this is all gonna be on like a sliding fee scale. So if we have people that don't have the assets, then this would be services. You mentioned about some that have potentially significant assets.
Yes.
Are those clients that we would suggest to go to the private sector for these programs versus relying on the, cause I know we have our costs associated in general assistance, your group, and community services, but we also expend quite a bit of county resource in our county attorney's office that, again, if they have the wherewithal to pay for those, the general taxpayer maybe shouldn't be paying for that. That's kind of my thoughts.
The only issue is I'm not sure where they would go. If there's no family or there's no, for instance, one of the people we have, I think we've been conservator for 10 to 15 years. She has no one left. So we don't have a significant number that have huge assets, but we do have some that have some assets.
Okay.
We don't have any millionaires.
Well, I was just, when I was looking at, and this is probably a conversation even with Jim. I was looking at some of these cases which we have, and I know if you look at the state office, cause that's what our legislatures say, well, we have that, well, it's understaffed and way behind, we know, so we have a couple hundred people we serve in these roles for. And I don't think that we've ever made, cause I think what happens ultimately when those folks pass or whatever, Medicaid, who is probably the other typical payer of this, recoup some of their costs through the court system when they, against assets. And I don't think we've ever filed anything for our costs. And I wonder if that's something the county should do, because we're now funding that out of property taxpayer dollars. And as we get limited on what we can use those for, I just wonder if it would be wise for us to, you may collect on 10% of it, maybe 5% of it, but it's, again, if it was money that would come back to the county taxpayers to offset the cost of the program, I think it's something we should consider in that program. And I don't know, Jim, would that involve a lot of effort on your part?
Well, I think we could take care of a lot of it. This is prospective only going forward, correct?
I would think.
Yeah, okay. I certainly would suggest that. I think the biggest assistance we can provide is upfront understanding what they have and getting in the game with the right costs and going forward. There are some people that I'm only really aware of one that we might be able to go back at, that for others, but since we haven't charged in the past, so what I try to do when we get asked to do one of these, I'm like, I need the financials, so we can understand what they have for assets. That way we don't have to waive costs and the court gets paid and then we can implement this. I'm not sure what the breaks point's gonna be on your waiver, what the income level is at which you would waive fees. But I mean, that's, maybe you have an answer to that question, but
And that will be, so we can't, per social security rules, we cannot charge anybody in a nursing home. So they're all waived. We can charge for conservator, we can charge for guardian, but we cannot charge for rep payee through social security rules. So when we look at the $41 we were currently charging, we would waive it if a client was under, so the rule is in our policies is 10% of their income or the fee that we charge, whichever is greater. So if somebody only makes, let's say, $1,000 a month and they have rent and utilities and they just truly can't afford that, we waive that. So there is a formula to figure it out, and it's 10% of their income. So if they would be under that,
Would be the max,
yes,
10% or the $55,
yes,
and that's on a payee.
that's on the payee.
But
So
guardian and conservatorship are different things.
those would be different, and those would be the yearly charge. So right now it's a flat 100. We have looked at all of our clients and think that for everyone we're guardian and conservator for, we think they can afford the 300.
You know, I think this is good that I asked her to kind of start looking at this, because as we had the conversation this last year with our general fund and with this 2% cap, you know, this is work that we do that really isn't addressed well in code. I think I wanna look at the code too and start talking the legislature. I'm not really sure with the ASO transition. I think this was a missed, I don't think that the state understood the extent to which counties were doing this type of work. You know, I know this started when Clinton County asked us to pick up 90 people, 80 some. I don't know. I don't remember what the number was, but they had
Good number,
80 some people that they were doing this for, that they won't have the resource for. And you saw in our budget where we're gonna be very limited. We've been able to pay for it today, to your point, Jim, so I'm really not concerned about going back, but I think on a go-forward basis, we need to make sure we track this expenditure and watch, and then that gives us something as the elected officials here to talk with our legislators about how do you protect these vulnerable populations, because this is work that we do, that we have, you know, I think Muscatine County's done this for over 40 years, so we need to make sure, and we have 216 clients. Last I
Yes.
knew, somewhere in there, so this affects a lot of people in our community. Okay,
I mean, I guess I'm of the opinion that eventually this should be something we should, I don't wanna cut anybody off, but I think this should be the state's job. And this isn't something we have to do, and unless we're revenue neutral on it, I don't see how we can continue justifying indefinitely moving forward.
I think that's gonna be,
I don't think we have a
a
choice.
a difficult decision for the boards as we go forward. I think we're gonna have to, and, you know, that was when it was mentioned to us about Clinton County, and, you know, my comment to them was, well, if it were just our staff and we didn't have to add staff, we would probably consider it. But I'm not gonna make that commitment for our county attorney, because there's a lot of work that goes on in that office that the Muscatine County taxpayers are paying for. So, you know, I think this is something that the state's gonna have to work through. I think they're aware of it now. I've been communicating with legislators, and we'll see what happens through the ASO rollout, which we won't really know till July. And I saw some things about that in the RFP, but I haven't gotten a really good feel for it, so.
Well, it might come from the DAP too,
Yeah.
that they haven't announced yet if any of that's gonna be in there. In March, the region management team and the ASO are having a meeting to kind of talk through some of the transition plan, but that hasn't happened yet, so.
So I'm okay with the fees, with the understanding that on those clients that don't have the means, that we can go ahead and waive the fees or set them accordingly. So I would make a motion that we approve that.
We have a motion by Jeff,
I would second.
second by Scott. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. What's up next? 4B?
Okay, so this is, we use a software program called CSN, and that has all the information from all the court committals. It also has GA and VA information. The new ASO has requested all that data be uploaded to them. And as of 6:30, we will have no access to any of that information through the mental health. We are hopefully going to keep GA and VA because that has years and years of history. If anyone's ever come in and received services, or we've paid their rent, or we've bussed them somewhere, we have all that information. So it goes into their eligibility, but we haven't figured out how this is going to all work. I've talked to Bill about it a little bit. He hasn't seen anything either, whether we would be able to purchase it from ISAC or that's something we have to figure out. But it's in the preliminary stages. So in 2018, apparently ISAC looked at this and said that this is allowable to give the information to whoever is serving in this capacity. I sent a letter that Lori had written on behalf of Scott County. Jim looked at it and made some changes to what he recommended that the letter say. We will be talking about it today at the region governing board meeting. I think it's based on per county, whether we sign off on approval. There is a contact we can reach out if we want additional information about releasing it. But I think they're wanting to go forward sooner rather than later. So I wanted to at least get it on your radar that this is coming up, and we will need to figure out what we're gonna do with CSN. But we haven't heard whether we can independently purchase it or how that's gonna work.
I guess I have grave concerns about the indemnification language in this waiver or transfer notice, whatever we're gonna call it. We have to indemnify them for the release, making sure that this is HIPAA, regardless of how, they're not gonna take any responsibility, essentially, is what I'm seeing in this.
Well, the answer, CSN is simply the entity that stores the information.
Okay.
And that was done through ISAC, basically for all the counties in the state, so it's technically each county's information. And the information, the request from IHHS was for everything. Now, there's some disagreement. Most, I think, in the state are gonna release the information. I know of at least one county that has said we're not gonna do it because we think it's a HIPAA violation. So what I've done is I've changed the release to just include the information that is specified in the Iowa Administrative Code that's supposed to be maintained by the mental health advocate for Muscatine County, and no more than that. And I think that's, as I gather, what a majority of the people are doing. There's only one that's just flat said no. But I think, in all fairness, ISAC's opinion is IHHS does not have a joint interest or ownership of this information. And so the reason they want the indemnification language is their counsel tells them this is A, HIPAA protected, B, HHS doesn't have a right to it. They're not a joint owner as some of the paperwork would have indicated, but the Iowa Administrative Code requires the county to keep certain information, and for them to be able to proceed forward with the redesign of the system, they're gonna have that information. And so, I think as a matter of practicality, it's a fight that even if you dug your heels in today, eventually they're gonna have to get it, because there's no way to go forward if they don't get it and have the information. I just wanna limit it to what the administrative code says we're supposed to collect. That way, if there's information beyond that, we're not authorizing the release of that information to try to limit it to that information only. So, I'm not gonna tell you that it's a perfect situation, but.
Has Karosh, have we talked to Karosh on this?
No, I have not. I've talked to ISAC about it, and again, they're just people that manage the information
Right.
system. They are not the owners of it. They very much believe the counties are the individual owners, or the people in charge of it, not the owners, the people in charge of the information, and that we have to authorize its release. They don't want to be responsible for that, because it's their opinion that it shouldn't be released.
And
I don't think it should be.
Karosh is the guardian. They work for the mental health region as well. So is that on? I didn't look at the agenda that closely. Is that on the agenda today? I don't remember.
Lori's gonna talk about it.
Okay.
And what they talked about at the CEO meeting, but Lori says, Karosh says we have to release it. I don't have that information and where she's getting that, but.
I'm gonna need to
That's-
see something in writing from Karosh before I talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm also not indemnifying.
My concern with the whole thing is we have data that is not related to mental health and disability services information in CSN, and we want to protect that data. We don't want to release that.
It sounds like the language you put in there would do that. though.
But
That
Jim's
was the intent.
Well, but my concern, it also says
But they're not
gonna
look at
review it. They're not, so if they release the wrong stuff or too much, we're liable. They are not. And they also hold no liability for any misuse of the records by Iowa HHS. So I'm a hard no on this.
So I would recommend that we probably wanna table this, but I would recommend that we also take what Jim's markup and get that to Karosh. And I know Nancy's probably typically been the one with the contacts, but maybe Kayla, we can figure out how to, I'll just contact Nancy and have her see and float this conversation by Karosh. I'm sure we'll talk about it today at the mental health meeting as well. And, I'll report back to the board on what the conversation is. I mean, I think it's data that we're gonna have to, it needs to get into the provider so we can continue services to our clients, to our constituents. But I think we need to be very careful about it because there's a lot of data there that maybe is not related.
And that may be the pushback from IHHS, you know, if you don't do it. what are we gonna do?
We'll do it. We're just not gonna be left holding the bag for it.
Well, but that's ISAC and CSN
I understand.
is not the.
But I want the
is
ASO
not the-
to step up and certify that it's gonna handle the data correctly.
Yeah, cause that's a non-governmental entity, right? It's a third party.
Or
It's a
IHHS,
contractor.
yeah. They
Either
both are.
IHHS or the third party, cause once it leaves our hands, we don't know what they're doing with it.
Yep.
Okay, so I think I would, make a motion to table this request.
I'd second that.
We have a motion to table and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of tabling this, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion to table passes. Thank you, Jessica. Anything else? Alrighty. Moving on to item number 5 is items with Planning and Zoning Administrator Eric Furness. Item 5A is discussion and possible action to set a public hearing for Monday, March 17th at 9 a.m. on the proposed amendments to, the Muscatine County zoning ordinance regarding private burial sites and cryptocurrency and data center facilities. Those things go together incredibly well.
Cryptocurrency, it's like it's hit Muscatine County, oh my word.
They are not related. for the record. No, there was just a couple, the private burial sites goes back a while. The zoning commission made a recommendation on that several months ago, but we kinda wanted to wait till we knew there were some other amendments coming up, so take advantage of setting a public hearing date, publication notices and that stuff, so. Some amendments, you'll have all the details ahead of that. What was in the recommendations is simply just to get it on the calendar for a public hearing on a couple items there.
Sounds good.
So I'll move the approval.
We have a motion to set the public hearing.
Second.
Second to do so as well. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Anything else, Eric?
Just a little update, and for everybody that works in this building, I'll be letting in a contractor that'll be replacing a couple of the doors that go out to the roof in the attic. Be letting them in at 6 a.m. They're gonna get started early to try to minimize, disruption to the assessor's office. So that's kind of the last part of the phase 1 of the administration building project where we redid the coping and edges. We did the pre-bid walkthrough for phase 2, where they'll be dealing with tuck pointing and some masonry work and repainting of this building, so that's coming along, so. Just a little update there.
Thank you, sir. Item number 6 is items with County Engineer Brian Horshowski. A is discussion and possible action authorizing the chair to sign a letter of support regarding the competitive highway bridge program grant application submitted by the Iowa DOT, specifically for the Highway 6 bridge over the east branch of the Wapsinock, how do you say that? Wapsinock?
Wapsi-no-not.
The Wapsie Creek in Muscatine County. Sinanona?
That's what I
Is
said.
that?
Wapsi-no-not.
Wapsinock.
Yes, this DOT, they recently reached out to us to give a letter of support for them for this bridge. There's a large grant that they're putting in for. The last time they did this was in 2018. The state has to submit this grant, the CHBP grant. Unfortunately, none of our bridges made the cut for their criteria when they were selecting. Really, the DOT only had 2 bridges that made the cut, and then there's roughly, I believe, 33 bridges throughout the county bridges throughout the state that made the cut. So this letter will somewhat just check a box for them as they're going after their grant. So it'll show local support by the county.
Doesn't cost us anything, right?
Correct. And I mean, even though we don't have a bridge that's on the list for this grant, anytime that there's bridges going after grants, we want to support it because when a bridge is in poor condition, it gets more of the bridge funding. So the more poor bridges we can get off the list, then hopefully that means the more bridge funding we will receive.
Good deal.
So I'll move the approval.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, anything else, Brian?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item number 7 is discussion and possible action to approve and authorize the chair to sign a memorandum of understanding between Muscatine County and the state of Iowa, Department of Management for Cybersecurity, with Information Services Director Bill Riley. Good morning, Bill.
Morning. This is just a continuation of an MOU that we already had with them. They renewed their grant or however they're funding this application through the state. We initially had it deployed on all of our systems. It's only required on the auditor's systems. And that is what we've narrowed it down to, is a scope of 7 machines in the auditor's office.
Does that save us any money? Does that save us money by narrowing down that scope?
No,
or-
no, it's free either way.
Oh, I see, okay. Okay.
Yeah, and I think when we discussed this one out, we had protections in, we felt in a lot of the areas of this, but it isn't gonna hurt to have redundancy.
Initially, we thought that, but then after we ran it for a couple of years, we pulled it off of all of our systems that aren't in the auditor's office because we were seeing performance impacts, whether that was conflicts with what we were running and what that application does. I can't say that with 100% certainty, but since they did not actually let us know until about 1 or 2 weeks ago that they actually had approved and are moving forward with that program again, there was no way we could have budgeted for our own endpoint protection.
So do you think you'll look at it and see if those issues go away, you may redeploy to other departments, or you're pretty satisfied where you're at?
I'd rather that we have control over it, because if we do it through the state for everything and we do away with our own, we only have a limited access console. So if we need a change, we have to contact the state to make the change. If we need support, we have to contact the state to contact support so that we can get support. It's kind of it's a nice offering. And if they did it to where we could budget accordingly, so that they could tell us a year in advance that they're not going to be renewing that, then we could, plan accordingly, but they don't. They're on a different timetable than we are, so it makes it very hard, and then we would be coming back potentially and asking for an amendment
Yeah,
for replacement.
I'd move the approval.
Got a motion?
I'll second.
Got a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. Thanks, Bill. Anything else?
Not for me right now.
Okay. Number 8, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the February 17th, 2025 regular meeting.
I'd move to approve.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. Number 9, correspondence. Scott, let's start with you.
I had a call from a resident at M&W Trailer Park regarding water quality issue. Again, these are things that seem to pop up there with some regularity. I called Eric, and he had already been contacted by 1 or 2 other homeowners in that regard, and he had already had it on his schedule to go out and visit those situations and move forward from that point. So that's all I had.
Okay, Jeff.
A couple emails on 245th situation, and then I've had a few contacts in the last week to 10 days concerning food pantries in the area and the issues around those. So Jessica has set up a meeting this week with myself and a couple of others, and we're gonna search into that. It sounds like we had sent we shut our food pantry operation out of community services a number of years ago and transferred it to the MCSA program. I don't remember how many days a week it was running, but that's down to 1 day a week, I think. And I think there's some concerns about that. So I think Jessica's gonna try to convene the food providers in the area, and we're gonna have a conversation about how we fix this problem, so.
I also had the 245th emails. Danny?
I had the 245th emails from Dusty Buffington, Matt Storms, and they both called me. That's all I had.
Kurt?
I had the same emails.
Okay, how about committees?
Yeah, on Thursday, the 20th, I had the Muscatine County Fair Board meeting.
Danny?
So on the 19th, I had a county trail system meeting that I got invited to up in Wilton, and that included a new city administrator, the city of Muscatine, the city of Wilton, city of West Liberty, and the new city administrator has a vision because of where, in his past history, of developing a countywide trail system. So they're trying to get everybody on board to make that happen. And apparently there's something going across the country from Washington to Washington, Washington State to Washington DC. And parts of that have already been completed in Iowa.
American Discovery Trail.
What's that?
American Discovery Trail.
Okay. And there's a couple different visions they have, and one of those is to go from Muscatine to Wilton, and then Wilton to West Liberty to kind of make a loop. But apparently the bi-state is already building a trail system down to Buffalo, and the city administrator, I can't think of Matt's last name. but- Martson. His vision is to maybe develop that one first. But eventually, all of this ground, I'd say 90, close to 100% of this will be in the county and not these cities. According to Matt, the board, they will need this board's buy-in, but according to him, they won't be asking us for any money, but to get this all going and put in place, because it's gonna be a long-term, maybe a 10, maybe more than that year plan to get this completed. But he's gonna eventually, they're gonna come to this board and talk to us about it, and they'll need our buy-in to work on the grants with bi-state and the DOT and maybe federal stuff, so. It was a good meeting, it lasted about an hour and 15 minutes, and that's what that covered. Also on the 19th, I had the full board meeting for Mississippi Valley Workforce Development, and on the 20th, I had the Mississippi Valley Workforce Development CEO meeting.
On Wednesday, the 19th, I had our Veterans Affairs Commission meeting. Jeff?
On Friday, the 21st, I had the Bi-State Personnel and Finance Committee meeting.
Yeah.
On Monday the 17th, I had Conservation Board. On Wednesday the 19th, I had Riverbend Transit, and that's all I had.
All right. Item 11A, with the administration office is an possible action, I should say, to set a public hearing on a FY 24-25 Muscatine County budget amendments for Monday, March 17th, 2025 at 9 a.m.
I'll move the approval.
Got a motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Which
Not opposed, I was in
okay.
agreement.
Cool. Motion passes. 11B is action to set a public hearing on the fiscal year 25-26 Muscatine County proposed property tax levy for Monday, March 2025 at 10 a.m. at the conclusion of I think that should be Board of Supervisors regular meeting.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Was that Kurt as the
I
second?
believe so, yes. And item 11C, discussion and possible action to approve a hiring request for the Human Resources Administration position in the administration office.
Yep, I'll move the approval.
Okay, we've got a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
I still don't think the timing's right on this one, but, so that's just the only comment I gotta make.
Okay. Anyone else? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
So that's 4-1. Motion passes. Item 11D, anybody have anything else from the administration office? Nope.
I do. Oh, administration.
You can be the very next one for item 12. Receive information from county employees.
I'm the next one. All right, welcome. I haven't been here for a while, so I thought I'd come and give you an update on our staffing. We've offered our seasonal positions, and so those are filled, Braden Van Auken and Alyssa Skurloff, so those will be coming up. We're currently seeking campground hosts, so if you know somebody that loves to camp and wants to be a campground host, we've got that out on Facebook and have been taking applications for that.
Katie, what does that mean, to be a campground host?
That means you bring your camper out to Salisbury and you camp for the summer, and we let you camp for free, and you get $50 a week for helping to keep the campground going. You check the bathrooms every day, make sure they're stocked, pick things up, open and close the firewood shed, make sure that, you know, things are tidy, clean out the fire rings. And it takes a lot of pressure off of our staff to do that, so.
Thank you.
Let's see, and then I'm not sure if our request for an environmental ed intern is gonna be approved, and so I'm assuming that that's still in process in this budget. Is that correct? Don't know.
Kayla?
They're looking at you, Kayla.
We will talk about budget deliberations later and.
Okay.
But.
Okay,
Okay.
we're just,
approved so far.
okay, we're just holding off on that until we hear something officially.
Sure.
And then there's two different grants that we're looking at applying for. One is a Delta Dental grant, and that would put a drinking fountain with a water bottle filling station at Discovery Park. We currently do not have one there. They've changed the process a little bit, so now they will pay for the full cost of the fountain, which is about $5,647. We would have to either install it ourselves or pay for the installation. I have a quote for $2,100. I'm still working with them because they don't have the fountain anymore that we really want to have, so it's not 100% done. So if you want me to come back for full approval once we know all the details, I can, but it's due here in March, so coming up. We're also looking at applying for the ballistic vest grant along with the sheriff's department. And so that'll be something coming up here in April that Jeff Mullen's going to help me with that, since it'll be the first time. And that'll be for our 3 law enforcement people. The the Deep Lakes Park Campground is coming along. So Triple B is planning to break ground next week on March 3rd, I think, or the week of March 3rd. Do we want to do a groundbreaking ceremony? Do you guys want to come and take a picture? Do you want a ribbon cutting?
What date did you say?
I think March 3rd is like a Monday. I think sometime next week is when he's looking at getting in there, so.
What do you guys think?
You want me to line something up? I like taking pictures, so.
Sure.
All
I
right.
think it's probably good for the public to,
Okay.
just so the public knows what's going on and they'll see the activity, obviously.
You spray paint a shovel gold or something?
We have one that's silver, actually. We found it the other day. That's what made me think of it. I'm like, oh, we should do this. This
Yeah,
sounds
we
fun.
could get some extra funding out of that, right?
Yeah, I think it's left over from when we built the Environmental Learning Center, so.
There you go.
Okay, we will schedule that. Would you like it to be like on Monday after this meeting, or what would be a good time for all
Well,
of you?
it's hard to tell when the meetings are gonna end, so probably in the afternoon would be better, I would say. What do
Okay.
you guys think?
Want like a 1 o'clock or a noon?
I don't know, when would your conservation board be typically works best for them? I would think they'd be,
If we have meetings during the day, it's usually at noon, but,
Wanna do it right
Noon's
after
fine.
that?
or in the evening.
yeah.
Well, the new
Noon's
meetings
fine.
are fairly well attended by
Yeah.
your group.
Yeah.
Should we do noon?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Makes sense to coordinate it with the conservation board.
Okay, that sounds great. Let's see, and then later on today, we have a meeting, with, Eric, and we're gonna be going over the inspection list and see what type of things that we're gonna be able to handle in-house and what things we might hire someone to come in and do. And then, the only other thing that I really had to report, we're also working on getting our online reservations going, so we'd like to be up and online by April 1st, and so we've been working with the treasurer's office with Amy and Allison, and so there's a little bit of procedures to go through to have an account for that money to come in, and we're working with Kayla also, and so we'll have all of that set up so that it's coming into a Muscatine County account, but not the general fund account, so that as money's coming in and stuff, no one else would have access to that, so.
It'll be 100% online registration then?
Not 100%. We're probably gonna set it up so that, like, for our camping, you can, if you show up, you can still get a spot that isn't reserved. So you'll have to make a reservation at least 3 days in advance. So if you show up and a spot's not taken and there's no card in there, you can camp there and pay cash or a check just like you have before, kind of on a one-night basis, like stay tonight and yes, tomorrow night's free. And so There's gonna be a little growing pains with our staff and probably the public, and so we're just gonna do what we can to try to make that as seamless and easy as possible, so. But the cabins, yeah, pretty much it'll be all online, and the shelters and stuff, for a while, if people still wanna show up and pay for it and stuff, they can do that, but we're gonna try to encourage everyone to go online, cause it's just so much easier, and everyone's used to doing that with hotels and everything, and it'll just take a lot of, weight off of Lori of doing all of those kind of reservations, so. Questions for me?
Sounds good, thanks for the update. Any other county employees? All right, we're on, moving on to number 13, receive comments from the public. Anybody at the public wish to address the board? Seeing none, let's take about a 5-minute recess before we go into budget hearings. So back around 9:45.